In a time of economic crisis, is the United States resegregating? In the heart of the American South, a handful of new cities have popped up, with new borders running along class and race lines. And the new governments? They're run by private contractors.
From the state capitol in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Avi Lewis, and this is Inside USA. Here in the affluent white suburbs of Atlanta, there's an eerie sense of calm. The United States is facing its greatest economic crisis in generations. Wall Street titans have tumbled. The entire doctrine of privatization, deregulation, and markets above all is being blamed. And yet here in Sandy Springs, Georgia, it's as if none of that is happening. 3 years ago, citizens here began a bold experiment. They voted to incorporate as a new city and secede from Fulton County, which is the municipal government that provides services to most of the region of Atlanta. Now, why on earth would people around the world be interested in the local politics of suburban Georgia? Because the new city of Sandy Springs brought in a multinational corporation to run all city services with the exception of fire and police, making Sandy Springs the first fully privatized city in the world. It's a trend which is already spreading fast. In the last 3 years, 4 new cities have followed suit, and they're all being run by the same company. Its name is CH2M Hill. It's one of the top U.S. defense contractors, and it's riding billions in revenue from the occupation of Iraq and the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. On this week's Inside Focus, we take a look at the global cutting edge of privatization, the rise of the contract city.
Welcome to Sandy Springs. Average family income, $80,000 a year. Average home price, $345,000. One of the most expensive neighborhoods in the state of Georgia. It's a world of gated communities and golf courses. Across from the Lamborghini dealership, City Hall is housed in a cluster of office buildings. City workers make the rounds in shiny new pickup trucks. If you look closely at the city crest, it's not an historic coat of arms, but a clean-looking logo forged in a corporate design department. You can't tell from the outside, but Sandy Springs' entire bureaucracy is outsourced. In place of civil servants, private contractors. Launched just 3 years ago, it's a political and ideological experiment that has no rival anywhere in the world.
We've got an unusual opportunity. We can take a blank sheet of paper and recreate how municipal government should operate and should function.
Rusty Paul is not just a city councilor. He's a past chairman of the Georgia Republican Party with 30 years in state politics. Sandy Springs has been a long time coming.
Well, we'd had 35 years to kind of plan what it was we wanted to do, what kind of city we wanted to create. But being Republicans, we were much more open to that kind of, well, let's see what the private sector's got to offer. And then the more we looked at it, the more intrigued we came with it.
Enter CH2M Hill, a construction and consulting giant famous for its huge government contracts from Iraq to New Orleans. For about $30 million a year, the company runs the city of Sandy Springs, using a web of temporary workers and subcontractors to pave roads, issue permits, collect garbage, even run the municipal courts.
CH has created an unbelievable niche for themselves in the private governance arena, that they've got a huge lead on anybody else. I mean, you're talking about the brand. Well, they have it.
Since this experiment launched in 2005, 4 other Atlanta suburbs have followed suit, forming independent cities and hiring CH2M Hill to run them. In another city hall inside another suburban office building, John Kachmar is the city manager for Johns Creek. He's one of only 7 staff who work directly for the taxpayer.
Inside this building, there's approximately 108 other staff that work here, and those staff are outsourced staff, and they work for a company called OMI, which is a wholly owned corporation under CH2M Hill. Essentially, the way it works is we say we want product X done, and how they get product X done is part of their subcontract with us. It's their business. I don't tell them, I think you need 5 more people on this job. They get the job done. That's part of the economy of scale of working with a corporation like this.
But the contract cities don't operate in a bubble, and the context in Atlanta is highly charged, both in racial and economic terms. The new cities have seceded from Fulton County, an area surrounding Atlanta that is 150 kilometers from top to bottom. At the top is North Fulton and the largely white suburbs. At the bottom is unincorporated South Fulton, a community that is mostly African American. Reverend Timothy McDonald has been ministering to the people of South Fulton for 25 years.
The poorest of the poor in the Atlanta region lives in unincorporated Fulton County. And so you will find that there are beds of poverty, of drugs, of communities that are basically given up and have no hope.
Until recently, South Fulton really looked more like a third world country than a part of the largest county in the state. Ride through North Fulton, ride through South Fulton, and just decide wherever you want to live.
But for the new contract cities, just living in a different world was not enough. Secession from the hardscrabble south of the county was clearly the goal.
The complaints were we're generating a tremendous amount of tax revenue for the local government that is being exported to other areas of the county. But the problem was we were generating all this money, and there was this perception that they're the cow to be milked as far as tax revenue goes, and nothing in return. They were giving us no hay back to generate more milk.
I guess the general feeling was, because this is a relatively well-to-do area, a well-to-do part of Fulton County, that tax dollars were being paid and sent other places in the county and not spent here on the infrastructure. And that's very true. It wasn't spent here on infrastructure.
When Sandy Springs and the other new cities left Fulton County, they took a significant part of the tax base with them. The county's revenues have been cut almost in half as the new cities have gone their own way, chasing their own dreams. Residents left in Fulton County are quickly discovering that in the new urban arrangement, the trickle-down economy is providing just that, a trickle.
The concept that I receive services based upon the fact that most of the people on my street are college graduates is absurd and ridiculous to the people in this city, and I would say anywhere in the United States.
As these new municipalities begin to emerge, it's affecting particularly public education. It's affecting the other municipalities' ability to deliver health care, fire, law enforcement, the things that really matter to people.
We're laying off firemen now who are really needed in North Fulton. We're laying off firemen now whose families are being negatively affected. We've laid off policemen.
So why are there people who are going to say that you're a bunch of white, affluent people who are basically selfish and you're starving a majority African-American city, possibly into bankruptcy?
Pause right there. I'll go get my tax bill. Let me bring you my tax bill and show you how much we get and how much Fulton County still gets from us. I'll show you my tax bill. $1,700 versus $800. So we're still sending twice as much revenue to Fulton County as we're keeping for ourselves. So this myth that we're starving Fulton County and taking all this revenue and keeping it totally for ourselves is ludicrous.
Nowhere in urban America do you get a dollar of service for a dollar of taxes. If you do, then those who are not taxed, I mean the lowest income, the neediest, would never get any services. They'd have no potholes filled, no police protection, no schooling, you know. So indeed, you do pay more than your share.
How can you have taxes just for me? We got to think about the elderly. We got to think about the disabled. We got to think about those who are poor. We got to think about those who are marginalized. With that kind of mentality of just for me, my dollar to come back just for me or just for my community, you are destroying the very thing that has held our country together.
Nowhere is the need for revenue more desperate than here at Atlanta's Grady Hospital, a famous but financially beleaguered institution, the only local hospital that serves the uninsured.
They said, oh, it'll be okay because she's going to get married a few months after she has the baby. That's not fine.
On a Friday afternoon, a group of teens gather for a peer counseling session, discussing issues related to their health and their futures.
Because at the end of the day, when you having that baby, whether the father is present or not, yeah, your mom may still support you. It's you, you know?
Joining the discussion is one of the hospital's best-known patrons. In 2001, actor and activist Jane Fonda donated more than $1 million to Grady's Teen Services Center, transforming the program and its impact on the community.
They had a very, very tiny space to work out of once a week in Grady. There was no dedicated space to this center that was doing such amazing work.
Grady, of course, it has financial crises. It's been the extreme right wing in Fulton County that has said, let it close. We don't care. We don't want to pay for it. In fact, Grady was a code word up there for a long time.
There's a lot of heart at Grady. There's everything at Grady but money. And if there was no Grady, oh my Lord, there would be a huge gaping hole in health services in the whole southeastern region of the United States.
The privatization fad in Atlanta's suburbs is sparking visceral debate about the future of Grady Hospital and other city services. But it's also raising deeper questions about the very role of government and the balance of public and private interests. Those questions are coming just as Washington is spending unprecedented sums of public money to save private companies on Wall Street and beyond. So the prospect of corporations running U.S. cities today is seen by some as deeply ironic.
The folk who promote the notion of privatization and deregulation have been caught with their pants down. It's come back to bite them in a big way. And even now, they are in denial about what that's about. You know, essentially, it is, capitalism gone amok. It's unfettered capitalism. And they're taking your money and my money and paying for those contracts and, greasing each other's palms.
Well, we want them to make a profit. They cannot provide the level of service to us that we expect if they're not making a profit. The profit motive is what keeps them focused every day.
Anytime in our history, a major multi-billion-dollar, almost trillion-dollar corporation can go under. And then who steps in? If the government doesn't step in, and in this case they won't be able to, who's going to bail out the citizenry? It would be total, absolute chaos and collapse.
In Sandy Springs, just like in the rest of the country, economic crisis is likely to deepen the disparities in society. Atlanta, famous in the civil rights movement for being the birthplace of Martin Luther King Jr., has long lived with the old divisions of black and white, rich and poor. So how will the new divisions play out as the privatized cities try to create bubbles of urban efficiency while the inner city struggles with its crumbling public sphere? With all the history of struggle in this community, Atlanta once again finds itself on the front lines, and the rest of the world may find a window into two starkly different visions of where the United States is headed.
If we are, in fact, going to split that way, separate, then what were all the deaths about? What were all the sacrifices about? So I don't think that's good for a government or for any institution to glory in being separate from folks.
Are you talking about the resegregation of Atlanta?
Yes, and we're going to see more tension. We're going to start seeing more violence. We're going to start hearing and seeing more protests because the people aren't going to be able to take but so much.
I think that over the next 20 years, you're going to find more and more communities that are going to look at this form of government and say it makes sense. The truth is they've got municipalities and counties now all over the country coming in. We've got people from all over the country coming in to study what we're doing.
Why not create a society, create an environment, create a government, create a taxation system that is indeed concerned about all of its citizens, that seeks to meet the needs not just of the privileged, but those who are also underprivileged, so that we can create what Dr. King talked about, that beloved community. That's my hope, that's my dream, that's what I believe that America can become with struggle, with patience and time, and doing the right thing.
Nobody believed in 1786 that little group of revolutionaries would come up with a system that has survived this long. So maybe this little band of revolutionaries in Sandy Springs will come up with something equally successful.
Coming up on Inside USA, my full conversation with Jane Fonda, her take on the U.S. elections and the connection to her famous trip to North Vietnam in the 1970s.